Your do-good, through-good station.
órale, Houston. Welcome back here on the new Amazing 102.5 FM. This Wednesday, January 13th. We have Chief Art Acevado here, still in the studio. We haven't ran you off yet, Chief.
Hey, but no, if you're going to say órale, you got to say Acevedo.
Acevedo.
Órale,
Chief.
Acevedo.
Can we say el jefe de policía,
Arturo.
Acevedo?
Órale.
We have to say like all three last names, though.
That's it.
Arturo Acevedo,
Ortega,
Gómez Ortega,
es Ortega de la Monte, de Villamontes, you know.
Cabeza de Vaca, all that.
Pick a last name, man. Pick a
Yeah,
last name.
we want to say shout out to all the Latinos listening out there. Queremos dar las gracias a todos que sintonizan cada semana. Tenemos distribución de comida sin contacto cada miércoles de 10 a 12 de la tarde para toda la gente que quiera, tomar parte en esa programación. Si quieren ser voluntarios o si quieren donar, se pueden sintonizar a breadoflifeinc.org para más información. We had a nice little wrap here in between segments, but I feel like we had to kind of save it a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
We're talking about, everything that's been going on and the media's role in everything that's been happening. You brought up a good point. If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
And you brought up the fact that you had written an op-ed for the Washington Post that they wound up not running. Do you want to expand a little bit on that?
Well, they call me and they go, I don't know you all, well, you probably don't know it, but I did an op-ed piece after the George Floyd's death for the Washington Post. And then they called me this Friday, and they said, hey, can you do an op-ed piece about law enforcement and how they failed and, because I talked about the own biases of the leadership in law enforcement. Hey, it's all right. It's to the right. They're conservative. No, baloney. There's a problem. There was a problem. They should have seen it coming. And I wrote it, and then it turned out to be not enough about race, so they decided not to run. And I like, wait a minute, is this your op-ed piece or this is my op-ed piece? And these are my thoughts. So, I am a absolute proponent of the free the media, the free press. It's critical that we have free press, that we have good investigative reporting. But the media sometimes manipulates public sentiment, and I think they do it to both sides. Because let's face it, if everything's kumbaya, ain't nobody gonna watch the news, right? If we're all kumbaya, they ain't gonna watch the news. I'll never forget the young man by the name of I think it was David Joseph Jr. Actually, no, it was another officer shooting in Austin. And this shooting happened. It was really bad shooting involving a police officer, completely bad shooting. I go to a community forum, and a guy named Chaz Moore, who's from Houston, a young budding activist at the time, he gets up, and Chaz Moore starts with black guy. He says, I don't care about your badge. I don't care about your pretty uniform. As far as I'm concerned, you can you can die and burn in hell. Now, and then he went on to say some really profound comments. I mean, really legit comments. And I remember thinking to myself, man, you know what's sad is this young man said some really important things, and all they're going to run is that soundbite of the angry black guy. Mm-hmm. And so, now, don't get me wrong, all right? I'm Cuban. We're emotional people, Latinos, right? I thought, okay, come on, man, let's take this outside, right? In your mind. But, I kept cool. And I prayed for him, right? Well, moved the clock forward. I didn't give up on him. He started Austin Justice Coalition. Mimi Styles, another young lady, started Measure Austin. We started working together. And I remember telling him we're real good friends to this day. I mean, I give him advice on how to get stuff done at the legislature, the council. And I always remind him, you know what? I didn't give up on you, Chaz, because I knew that you had some legitimate. First of all, your anger was righteous. There's a reason to be angry, but don't ever give the media an opportunity. Just like when we have protests, when we start engaging in violence and we allow people to hijack it, we hijack the cause. Ain't nobody gonna start talking about George Floyd if stuff are burning. True. But if people are marching, they're lifting their voices, they get it. And so the media will, at times, if you're not careful, they will manipulate us. And the sad thing is now we have this alternative media. You talk about fake news? Are you kidding me? The election was stolen? Absolutely not. There is no evidence. Now, are there bumps in the road in every election? Absolutely, but not mass fraud, which was absolutely a false narrative that was fed by the president to Ted Cruz and other people that I think really incited violence with their
I said
rhetoric.
Ted Cruz no lo quiere ni en su casa. So,
Oh, man, let me just say this. I think he's, he was born in Canada. I don't want to blame him. I don't want to claim him as a Cuban.
They're not sending their best.
Let me tell you something. Nobody talks smack about my father, man. I mean, you talk smack about my father, you are dead to me.
Yes.
And the only guy that gets to talk smack about my wife is me. I live with her. She gets to talk about, but no man gets to talk about your father and talk about your wife. They're dead to you. No self-respecting Cuban or any man.
Thank you.
You are dead to me.
Thank
and
you.
that's all I've got to say about that character.
Indeed.
Let's move it along because I'll get beat up for talking about.
Let's leave it at that. That unsavory character down at. Anyway.
He calls me political. Give me a break. Are you kidding me?
Man. So I actually want to talk to you about, we've been talking about the pandemic and everything that's been going on. I want to talk in relation to, we had a let's call it a major event happen at the Set nightclub here just a few days ago, and that was a very this is a very unfortunate situation. So in a situation like that where we have restaurants or clubs, taking advantage of those loopholes in order to stay in operation and pack people in, like what kind of strain does that put on the police? And then in a situation where something like that happens, where there's an unfortunate incident, someone starts shooting, like how does that look in the middle of the pandemic, and like what's the police's response?
Well,
to that?
First of all, it looks bad if, in fact, they are not. If they're operating in contradiction to the rules and the law and the requirements, and we have police officers off duty working there, that's a problem.
For sure.
'Cause that means because these cops, you're getting paid, $40 an hour to be there off duty. You're looking the other way. That's a problem. So, I talked to Sheriff Gonzalez. He and I talked about it after. I said, Sheriff, we got to make sure that our people are not working in places that are running contrary to the requirements, the COVID restrictions, because if they are, we need to hold them accountable. So it's a huge problem. But let me tell you what the biggest problem is in this community. I'm really upset because, look, man, I'm all about criminal justice reform. People try to, they try to take my position and they try to twist it, right? Look, when people are not engaging in violent crime, if it's low-level crimes, if it's addiction, we need to treat drug violations as what they are, addiction. I'll never forget, I work patrol all the time. And on New Year's Eve, I work patrol. If you want to find me on New Year's Eve, you'll find me on a black and white. Right. I always bring John Whitmire with me. You guys know John Whitmire? The Dean of the Senate. He's a Democrat here from Houston. He's my senator. I actually voted for him. And he's in charge of criminal justice in the legislature. We're on patrol my very first I swore in November 30th. Of 2016 on December 31st, I'm with John Whitmire on patrol. I was brand new, so I didn't even know how to find the station. So I had a young officer with me in Northeast. Let me tell you about that officer. He had like a 90s approach to a 20th century approach to policing to a 21st. And I told him that day, I'm brand new. Still go, hey, young man, you need to slow your roll, and you need to start changing the way you police because you're not going to survive.
Facts.
Guess what? He's no longer one of my cops. Okay, I called it. I warned him. So he stops this African-American young man, probably in his 35 years of age. I don't remember the exact age. As he gets out of his car in his work uniform, he chucks a rock. Okay, so he's in his work uniform on his way home, New Year's Eve, has maybe a little problem with some substance abuse issues, chucks the rock. The officer spots it, picks it up. He's proud. That's a felony.
Right.
So now what do we do with this young man that night? We arrest him. He's charged with a felony. We can't leave his car because if we come back, it's on 4 blocks. It ends up being, we end up being liable, so we store it. I will open the door, go in to start inventorying his stuff. I see a photo of his son, maybe about a 10-year-old, really handsome young man. I'm thinking to myself, what have we accomplished in terms of public safety by arresting this guy for a rock of a controlled substance that's only going to hurt him and nobody else, unless he's driving, right? Sure. You don't want to drive high. So I told the senator, I said, Senator, now my officer just chucked that. It's destruction of evidence. I have to fire him for that. But why can't this just be a summons to a drug court and you have to go to a program?
Yep.
That's, to me, what reform should be about. But what's happening is that we have some really violent people here and across the country. They're going in one door and out the other because we're taking reform to an extreme. And what's going to happen if they're not careful, and I'm talking about murder, such and everything else, is everything works like this in life. The pendulum swings. We're going to end up losing legitimate reform that should be about that young man that I just described because of the illegitimate coddling of really bad people. And guess who's dying? Communities of color and poor white communities. So
Indeed.
we got to really keep an eye on that and make sure we're smart about how we do these things.
Yeah,
Ask me some
Yeah,
really
I
tough
appreciate
questions.
that.
You guys are going to get beat up because you're not asking me all the tough
I got
questions.
one for you. I got one for you.
Please
So
do.
with everything that's going on, we've seen a rise just nationwide in let's call it white nationalist violence.
Yeah.
Have you seen any threats of like that here in Houston, or
Hey, man,
are
just-
you guys preparing for anything coming up, especially for Biden's inauguration?
Well, first of all,
Yes.
follow me on Twitter because you'll see that I've got some trolls that are absolute racists.
For sure.
And if I had time to troll back, I would, but I don't. A lot of people don't realize Texas is a hotbed for the militia movement. It's a hotbed for white
Oh, yeah.
supremacist groups. And Houston area, our region, is a hotbed. So it is a challenge. And it's real clear that the number one domestic threat to this country, according to the FBI, and to other agencies is that movement. So let's not be naive, and which is what really angers me, that we knew that going into this to January 6th, and they were completely not prepared. On the 7th, you saw they finally moved in thousands of troops, hundreds and thousands of cops, the big fencing, everything that should have been there on the 5th. And you cannot run away from the fact that had that been a left-leaning group protest, it would have been a much different posture in terms of the preparation and in terms of the response.
I got you.
Absolutely, I
so
agree.
Chief Art Acevado, stay with us here. We got one more mix coming up before our time is up. This is órale Houston on New Amazing 102.5 FM. Chief Art Acevado in studio. Don't go anywhere.